NATO, established in 1949 by 12 founding nations, has been a key player in European security discussions since the end of the Cold War. The organization's strength and commitment to Article 5 have made it the longest-lasting and most successful defense alliance in history. The Soviet threat to Western Europe was the foundation of NATO's common defensive bond, and its post-Cold War purpose was to deter war through credible collective defense. The former Soviet bloc countries sought security from Russia and the return of Russian influence, leading to NATO's expansion into former Eastern European countries. NATO expanded into these countries, pushing its borders closer to Russia, providing security to prevent Russia's return. Despite most member states maintaining defense spending levels below what is required for credible readiness, NATO is now stronger than ever against any potential European threat. The short-lived Ukraine war of 2014 served as a wake-up call for parts of Europe, but it did not pose a significant threat due to the continent's continued low defense budget expenditures. In 2022, the larger Russian invasion of Ukraine positioned NATO at the forefront of European security and collective defense. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg reported that 23 of the 32 NATO countries are meeting their agreed-upon 2014 target of 2% of the GDP on defense ahead of the 2024 NATO summit in July. However, the discussion on NATO capability and deterrence has focused on military spending and acquisition as it races to deter Russia from threatening NATO states. NATO's true strength lies in its Article 5 guarantees, which give it its deterrent credibility. The Soviet Union knew this and found it impossible to exploit significant gaps in this commitment, and NATO's strength was derived from the threat it posed and the unquestioned common goals shared by its members. NATO's expansion has made the alliance militarily stronger, but its strength is questionable. Article 5 is the cornerstone of NATO, and the threat and purpose of member states must be sufficient to provide the focus of NATO cohesion to all member countries. As more countries join, the potential threats diminish, making it difficult for NATO to act unanimously to uphold Article 5 in a crisis. For example, if NATO does not pursue consensus as its rules require and a war starts, but only 27 of the 32 nations agree it is an Article 5 scenario, its strength will be compromised, and more countries may decide to drop out of the war. To remain viable as a collective defense organization, NATO needs to narrow its focus on basic issues on which all 32 nations can agree. The current form of NATO is no longer a viable collective security organization, and it needs to focus only on its most basic mission, which is the collective defense of its international physical borders and potentially cyber warfare. A new defense organization could be formed, which could operate outside of the European area and form associations in Asia to provide Europe with security against potential threats from China and North Korea. NATO leadership has identified potential threats to European security, but its expansive breadth of membership makes consensus on most policies nearly impossible. The best way to save NATO is to narrow its focus and have its members create a new organization of NATO member countries and like-minded countries around the world to help secure Europe and the North Atlantic.